roasted fresh daily in Batavia, Illinois.
Coming up next, it's me, Mike Gallagher, right after Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and back by popular demand, former CBS News foreign correspondent, and I believe it's public knowledge, because I read it in a public outlet, that Laura Logan has been signed by Sinclair.
Yay.
So she's back in business, which is good news, and she's back with us, which is better news. Lara, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning.
Morning. So why don't we start with the D.C. press corps' coverage of the cavalcade of fun that was had on the Hill last week with Attorney General Barr testifying, offering such insight into cloak and dagger happenings as how he responded to Bob Mueller's letter. He picked up the phone and said, "Hey, Bob, what's with the letter?"
Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised because there's been a consistent dropping of standards and a consistent departure from what journalism is supposed to be. But I guess because I've worked with so many good journalists over the years and I've seen a lot of good work done, I'm still kind of always hopeful that people are going to remember what it is we're supposed to do, which is to search for the facts and not the facts that support. You know, we have that old saying, right? Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look for the truth, and it's not supposed to be guided by politics. And, you know, I have to say it again, because apparently the only people not listening to this are the propagandists and the journalists pushing that propaganda. The people in this country they're not prepared to put up with this anymore. They're tired of it. And as much as people may want what Bob Mueller was investigating to be true, he didn't find the evidence. He didn't say it was true. So at a certain point, you have to look beyond the political narrative that is being pushed and ask why. Why? What really happened, and why did it happen, and who was responsible? The most basic questions of journalism: who, why, where, how, and when.
But journalists want to see an unredacted version of the Mueller report. And do you think that they should have access to that?
Well, first of all, it's not my position to decide. It's no journalist's position to decide who gets access to what. There's something called the law. What does the law say in these situations? I mean, you only have to go back, of course, and other people have done it, to the prosecutor who was appointed, Kenneth Starr, when he investigated Bill Clinton. Well, that was under different legal authorities. Why? Because the Democrats didn't like the legal authorities that permitted people to see their report. And so they let those laws lapse. And that's why a special prosecutor had to be appointed under a different set of laws. You know, so it's not up to what journalists want or what journalists don't want. We don't have a voice as an entity like that. What we actually work for something called the truth. And that's what every journalist should want. And, you know, it's just that you can apply a standard. It never fails me, which is called, if it were reversed, right? Sal Atkinson wrote a wonderful book about this. You know, that if you reverse the roles, what do you end up with? Well, if you reverse the roles, I mean, I can point you to a political magazine piece before the election results was held that literally laid out how the Clinton administration, how the progressives were planning on taking out James Comey and justifying taking him out. A runaway FBI director, he was described as the most dangerous and out of control since Hoover. And then suddenly he gets fired by Trump, and now it's James Comey is the greatest FBI director in the history of the world. And how could he have been fired? This must point to something nefarious happening in the government. If you're paying attention, and of course most people don't get to pay attention because they're running around, trying to pay their bills and feed their families and do their jobs and live, decent, responsible lives. But for people like me whose job it is to pay attention and look for what the real stories are and follow the facts and find the truth, well, when I watch this landscape, it's obvious. And fortunately, more and more people are recognizing these patterns because good propaganda follows a pattern, right? Bad propaganda follows a pattern. and more of those patterns are becoming visible. They've been completely and utterly exposed with the Mueller report. But what you've got here is a case of, even when faced with photographic evidence, right? Deny, deny, deny. Let's make it about something else. Let's find another red herring. And every single journalist who's doing that today should be held accountable for that. And they should be holding themselves accountable. And moreover, all that false reporting, right? What happened to all the people who did that false reporting? And they were awarded prizes for that. In the journalistic establishment, we lauded praise on each other and recognition for this outstanding work. I don't understand how anyone could have done that, because long before the Mueller report came out, in the first reading of the BuzzFeed, of the dossier that went afterwards printed by BuzzFeed, it was so obvious. The truth was so obvious. You didn't have a single first-hand source. You had the most outlandish claims. You had nobody answering the question of who paid for this, why they were doing it. Why were some people in America allowed to sit down with acting intelligence agents for Putin's government and other people are not? That's the standard. If it were the other way around, we're putting that standard in place. Why are some people allowed to meet with Russian intelligence agents and some people not? Why are some people allowed, some political campaigns allowed to use intelligence provided by Vladimir Putin, information provided by him? Why are some campaigns allowed to use that as leverage against another campaign and others are not? Why are some people in America allowed to use that to go to the courts and some people are not?
And
it doesn't make any sense. You're making a fuss about a meeting with Trump Tower over the Magnitsky Act and with people and trying to connect these people to Putin. Another American campaign has literally paid people to travel to Russia to actually have meetings with FSB agents, document the information they're given, and leak that, not only to journalists, but take it to the Department of Justice, take it to the FBI, and take it to the Hill. I'm stunned that journalists are not doing stories about this.
Well, and the other
Why
thing,
are they not investigating this?
The other thing here, too, is the people who got it right, who are also ignored. So we ignore the people who got it wrong consistently and continue to in some respects, even though there's been some rapprochement from the New York Times and others about, well, maybe we didn't have it all totally right. But people like Kim Strassel at the Wall Street Journal, people like John Solomon at The Hill, Byron York at the Washington Examiner, these people consistently got it right for the last 2 years, and they're also still ignored.
Yes, they get ignored. And you know what? I have a problem with the New York Times and the Washington Post. They're not saying we got it wrong. They're not standing up and saying, as a newspaper, we got it completely and utterly wrong. Where are all the reports saying, yes, the Trump campaign was spied upon? Take one journalist to go back and look at all those headlines and all the articles that were run mocking the Trump administration and mocking Trump himself for saying that his campaign was spied upon. Did he use the wrong words? Really? Because he said he was wiretapped and that technology went out with the ark? Yes, it was the wrong choice of words. But what he was saying was my campaign was spied upon. And you know what? It was. And the basis for spying upon him? Oh, yes, that's right. Information gathered by the other political campaign opposing him in reaction and delivered on a silver platter by Vladimir Putin's intelligence agents at actual meetings that really did take place with the intent of destroying the electoral process in this country. Vladimir Putin played both sides in this. It doesn't take, it really doesn't take half a brain to figure that out. The more time America spends eating itself alive and tearing each other apart, the more space and opportunity Vladimir Putin has to pursue an agenda and to undermine the U.S. and American interests all over the world. That's what he's been doing every single day. So what you can thank journalists for in this country, what you can thank politicians for in this country, is for enabling Vladimir Putin, not the Trump campaign for allowing him entry into the American political system, for putting a traitor and an intelligence asset in the White House. Let's just remind people, that's what the media was actually reporting. That's what people in this country were saying, that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, is an intelligence asset working for the Russian administration and Vladimir Putin. And so are members of his cabinet. That is the most outrageous claim when you look at the facts. And that's what I'm looking at. I'm not defending Donald Trump. I'm not defending his cabinet. I have no interest in the politics in this. My only interest is in the truth. And the truth here is that there is no president of the United States has ever been an intelligence asset for a foreign government. And for the people making a statement like that, why are they allowed to get away with that?
Yeah,
and why is Adam Schiff and John Brennan and Clapper, why are none of these people being held to account?
Well, you're right.
What?
I mean, and you're talking about accusations of treason, and that this is just like talk about a new normal or the obliteration of standards. You can just accuse the president of treason. You can accuse Bill Barr of treason after the fact, willy nilly, no evidence, and then no repercussions. Whether you're a member of Congress or you're a member of the press corps, it's troubling.
And let me give you a classic example. Where are the journalists who care so much? We're so much about truth to power, right? This is what we do. The noble warriors. Yeah, that's us. So how come not a single journalist ever questioned the former U.S. Attorney General, Laura Lynch's handing over of the Harry email post to the head of the FBI? The FBI is a law enforcement body. That's where they get their legal authority. What does law enforcement do? They investigate. Do they recommend for prosecution? No, that is not their job. What do? They'll investigate the facts. What does the Department of Justice do? These are the prosecutors. These are the people who recommend or take a case forward. They're the only agency, in fact, that has the legal authority to do so. So when Loretta Lynch has this meeting with Bill Clinton, and if anyone thinks that two politicians have been around the block 100 times, don't know perfectly well what they're doing, I would really question that assumption, number one. Number two, both of these people have an army of journalists around them the entire time. So the idea that they were going to meet on the tarmac and nobody was going to know about it, wow.
Oh,
okay, you really have to be stretching the truth here to think that that's realistic.
Well,
That's
yeah,
true.
and that he was going to go play golf in Arizona in the summertime
Yeah.
when it's 112 degrees
Come on.
out. Come on.
The whole story stinks, right? It stinks. I can't prove any of that, but it stinks. What I can prove is that the law says prosecutors prosecute and investigators investigate. And the person who should have been handed to, that post should have been handed to, is the Deputy Attorney General. Why it was given from one agency to another is completely inexplicable to me. And nobody questioned the legal authority to do that. Nobody questioned the reasons for doing that. Think they just thought that did they think Comey was just going to do their bidding? And then they got upset when he didn't? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That's completely speculative because I've never reported on the story. But what bothers me is that the facts are that the Attorney General should never have handed that post over. And the speed with which he did it made the hackles on my back rise because you never see that.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about patterns of propaganda. And it seems to me one of the patterns is applying different words in different circumstances depending on who you're reporting on. And this is the use of the word spying. So that, the D.C. Press Corps routinely used the word as it pertained to FISA court applications, as it pertained to Carter Page. Bill Barr uses the word and people lose their minds over him suggesting spying, even when he provides additional context to say, I'm not saying illicit spying, I'm saying spying. It could be authorized and appropriate. It could be problematic, and that's why we're going to go back and look at it.
Well, it's just classic. Because what they want to say is, we were investigating Carter Page, who, by the way, has never, ever, ever had a single charge laid against him. And this is the second time that they were investigating. They didn't have any charges against him the first time. In fact, what the FBI concluded, if you go back to their files, they actually concluded that Carter Page had absolutely no idea that the Russians who were the FBI then charged with spying, that they were even spies. Okay, so they cleared him in their first investigation, unequivocally, by the way. The language leaves no room for doubt. So you've cleared this guy. Now on the basis of what exactly are you now going to authorize this? And I say this because I'm not American. I came to this country as an immigrant, and this is my home. And when I've learned about the U.S. Constitution, is that the document is the foundation of everything in this country and in this society. So when you're going after amendments to the Constitution, like the right to privacy, these are among the most sacred tenets right? We don't violate these without real due cause. This is the Holy Grail in a sense. And suddenly, the Holy Grail doesn't matter as much anymore. Suddenly, you can unmask people and violate a person's right to privacy, American citizens, and you can do that in violation of all the rules and all the laws, and suddenly no one expects anyone to be held to account because there's a political motive for it. And it's the same thing with Carter Page. It's the same thing with spying on the Trump campaign. Nobody wants William Barr to use that word because when he uses that word, it takes on a degree of authority because he's saying it in his professional capacity. He's not one of these many politicians out on television saying whatever they want, right? Accusing anyone of whatever they want and throwing out egregious accusations against, let's not forget, right, Mike Flynn, a three-star general who spent most of his life serving this country in Iraq and Afghanistan, all the way back to Grenada. He was accused of being a traitor and being treasonous. Imagine what it's like for people like that when there's no basis to the accusations. Accusations, by the way, for which he has never, ever been charged, which are completely baseless. You've got a man here that even a special counsel is recommending that he be treated leniently because he's been a true patriot. So it just is ironic that people jump up and down when William Barr uses the word, and now suddenly they want people to be very specific about what the word means. But we can throw that word out anytime we want, in any capacity we want, without ever having to be accountable for its consequences. And, as a journalist, I'm very aware of the consequences of what I do. I take those responsibilities extremely seriously. And I weigh those consequences and concerns against every single decision. That's what we all do. If you have integrity in your life and then you have to have it in your work. You can't tell yourself you're a good person at home and then go to work and do whatever you like, for whatever reason you want. And then still go home and tell yourself, but I'm still a good person. It doesn't work that way.
She is Laura Logan. She is former CBS News foreign correspondent and recent signee of Sinclair. Look forward to more from Laura and another appearance on the show. Laura, thanks so much for joining us as always. Appreciate your insights.
Thank you so much.
And she joined us on our Turnkey.pro answer line. And it's a boy. Meghan Markle had a baby boy, 7 pounds, 3 ounces.
Who the hell cares, in the famous words of